For me, this is not only a journey into the past, but also the opportunity to pay tribute to a friend, Ivo Peters, whose name is synonymous with the old Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway. Much of Ivo's filming and photography was undertaken on the northern section of the line, between Bath and Midsummer Norton, and on over the rugged Mendip Hills to Shepton Mallet and to Evercreech Junction. The Midland, a reminder that, in addition to Brunel's Great Western, the city of Bath was once served by the Midland Railway, here at Green Park Station, perhaps better remembered as the northern terminal of the Somerset and Dorset line, and full of memories for me. I used to stand here, willing enginemen to invite me onto the footplate. Little did I then imagine that the passage of 30 years would, in turn, witness closure, dereliction, and now the superb restoration of the station, albeit to serve primarily as a car park to an adjacent superstore. Today, if we wish to travel over the Mendips to Evercreech Junction, it must be by car. And here, where steam once ruled, the surroundings now echo to the sounds of other motive power. To most people, the Somerset and Dorset was a holiday line. The majority of heavily loaded through trains, running only on summer Saturdays, required the combined power of two locomotives. Such were the gradients over the Mendip Hills. But the pride of the line, the Pines Express, ran daily throughout the year, Sundays excepted, between Manchester and Bournemouth. It was at the Midland station that Ivo took his first railway photograph in 1925. Today, close to the spot where trains departed, is an aptly named road. For nearly 60 years, until his recent illness, Ivo has recorded the changing railway scene throughout the British Isles. But it is no secret that his favourite line was the Somerset and Dorset, with its close-knit family of dedicated railwaymen, for whose skills Ivo had the highest regard. Many were to become his friends, and still visit or correspond with him at his home in Bath. Amongst them, fireman Peter Smith.
Of course, I was photographing on the S&D before Peter appeared on the scene, and my first photographs of Donald were with your predecessor, Peter, Frank Stickley.
Yes, that's right.
Who was Donald's fireman. And then you appeared. Yes, it must have been through Donald I met Peter.
Yes, I think I first met you at Bath Green Park because you were then in the habit of issuing out photographs that you'd taken perhaps a week previous to drivers and firemen, and used to have extra prints done for us. And I believe we ran in one day on the Pines, and you were on the end of the platform, and said, "Oh, here you are, some photographs for you." Something I took last Saturday, and that was our first meeting. This would have been in about 1954.
Peter's old driver, Donald Beale, is also commemorated here in Bath, where, in 1919, he first joined the Somerset and Dorset Railway. When filmed by Ivo in 1962, Donald's locomotive handling over the S&D was already becoming legendary.
Well, he was a charming man, and yet nearly all the drivers on the S&D were charming people. It was very, very rare to find someone who wasn't pleasant. Yes, Donald, of course, was an absolute charmer.
22 years later, Donald, now a youthful 83, is back amongst old friends. His fireman, Peter Smith, and colleagues David Massey and Ray Stokes, both ex-S&D enginemen.
When they extended the service, well, Evening Star was running around with 3 coaches on.
John Thorne took 10 up last Saturday with a 9. And frightened him how easy she took the bank. He couldn't understand it.
Yeah, I can understand it.
He looked back to see if whether he dropped a couple off somewhere. But, oh no, they're no engine for the S&D.
They were.
Yes.
Only thing wrong with it, they came too late, didn't they?
That's the trouble.
We did that with them years before.
That's right, and they would have saved the Somerset and Dorset.
That's right.
At Cranmore, Donald and Peter are reunited with another old friend, loco number 92203, on which Donald first taught Peter to drive. The engine is now restored to working order here on David Shepherd's East Somerset Railway.
Having all that then, Don?
Just doing a little bit, Pete.
Taking a few corks back here and there?
Yeah, I've done that one.
Go on then, Donald. Come and show us how it should be done.
Right on. Come up.
Go on in, Peter. Go on, Donald.
here
You
we
know
go.
all the way around, don't you?
Uh-huh.
There you are, mate. That's your seat.
Lovely.
Okay. Think you can find your way about
Yes.
with a bit of luck. That's it.
Oh.
Forgotten what a long way up it was, Peter.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks very much. Hello, Donald. All right?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. How are you?
Not too bad. What's it like to be back in the old driving seat again,
Oh,
then?
fine.
Eh?
Fine. Quite like old times.
Setting off from Bath, first of all we came to Bath Junction, then you had the climb out of Bath, which was 1 in 50, climbing up to Devonshire Tunnel. Anyway, you came out of Devonshire Tunnel into Lincoln Vale. That was a very beautiful spot. You were still climbing at 1 in 50, and you came up into a little wooded section at the end.
In the early spring, Peter and I decided to revisit some of Ivo's favourite lineside locations between Bath and Evercreech Junction. We headed first to the summit of the 2-mile climb out of Bath, at the southern end of Lincoln Vale, an isolated and, in summer, a picturesque location.
Right. And often we used to see them across here in the field, of course. We used to take broadside shots of us on the Pines Express.
Yes, well, that was possible in those days, but it wouldn't be now. I mean, that was all grass then, wasn't it?
It was all overgrown now, trees and so on. It's incredible, really, to come back and see it.
Yeah. Oh, look, there's the old brick base to the linesman's hut that was situated there.
Yeah.
Of course, when the line was first opened in, was it 1874?
Right.
It was single track all the way down to Evercreech, wasn't it?
Well, yes, but of course, later on, much of the line was doubled.
The favourite spot of mine there was just above the entrance to Combe Down Tunnel. And in the spring, when the spring green was about on the trees, it was quite delightful.
Amazing when you think, Peter, the entire 26 miles from Bath Junction down to Evercreech were built in just 2 years.
Yes, it was amazing. Incredible feat of engineering, really, wasn't it?
Well, Peter, here we are, Combe Down Tunnel. I don't suppose you used to want to hang around in here too long?
Well, not really, Mike. I mean, this tunnel was just over a mile long and extremely restricted bore. If you had a large engine, it was only about 12 inches from the top of the chimney to the roof.
I suppose that explains this, the old build-up of the soot.
Well, I think I probably contributed to some of that.
You reckon you put half an inch of that on there, do you?
I probably do, in actual fact. But of course, this tunnel and the similar Devonshire tunnel, they were really bad for footplate men because they were on steep gradients. And of course, the engine would be labouring for a tunnel like this. I mean, this particular tunnel, if you're on a northbound freight, you would be travelling pretty slowly through here. And the engine would be working extremely hard. And of course, all the exhaust fumes would be going down off the chimney and choking the footplate crew. And it certainly wasn't pleasant at all.
So you swept down through Combe Down Tunnel and you popped out the other end into Horsecombe Vale, which was, superb scenery, absolutely magnificent. And the gradient increased to 1 in 55 down, and you swept down over Tucking Mill Viaduct, and then on down past the grounds of Midford Castle, and then you came to the little Midford station, all single line.
Well, to me, Peter, of course, this was the most picturesque section of the entire line, down through Midford Station and along the Midford Valley.
Well, of course, Mike, you're biased, aren't you? I mean, you used to work the signal box here, didn't you? So they tell me.
Well, better not say too much about that.
No.
Oh, look, Peter, they've taken down the overgrowth here, and that's the sort of view you used to get all the way along through the length of Midford Station, which we're approaching now. And there's the old Great Western line from Limpingstoke to Camerton over on the bridge there.
Oh, yes.
Where they filmed the Titfield Thunderbolt in 1952.
I remember, yeah. No, I think actually the first photograph of Ivo's that I saw was taken at Midford. I thought then, what a marvellous place, how beautiful. And it still is, isn't it, Mike?
It is, yeah. Yeah, even the sun comes out at Midford, you see.
But of course.
Let's walk on down and try and find the station.
Right.
Oh, just along here, Peter, is where one of the signal wires used to run underneath the platform. Yeah, there's the pulley wheel just there, you see.
Oh, yes, there it is. We used to work all the expresses to Bath, and so we used to flash through here at some speed, and we didn't see the incidental details, if you like.
I know, you used to come through a bit too fast sometimes. You used to rattle the windows in the box, Peter.
Oh, is that right?
Midford box, it was quite magnificent. It was always absolutely spotless. There'd never be a trace of dirt anywhere. And the brass was cleaned every day, and the floor was polished at least twice a week. And this was done mainly by two signalmen, the late Percy Savage and the late Harry Wiltshire. Sadly, they both died now. But Percy and Harry, two absolutely charming people, gentlemen in the true sense of the term. And what absolutely staggered me was that the very last day the Somerset and Dorset was open, all the brass was cleaned, the floor was polished, just as usual.
so sad, Peter, to see all this desolation of something that you would have thought would have gone on forever.
Indeed.
Let's have a look at this picture I've brought along of Ivo's. Now, we're stood in exactly the same spot that he took this picture back in the 50s. Well, the old viaduct's still there, Peter, and the pub. Let's go down and have a pint.
Never mind the pint. Mike, I thought you were going to tell me about your courting days in the signal box at Midford.
Ah, well, I promised Sandra we wouldn't mention that.
Sadly, not a foot of track remains between Bath and Evercreech, but the Somerset and Dorset Railway Trust found a home and established a museum here at Washford on the West Somerset Railway. One exhibit in particular recaptures for me the atmosphere of the old line. It's the creation of Peter Cattermole.
Midford box. This brings back special memories for me, Peter. How on earth did you manage to recreate this so accurately?
Well, it's thanks to Ivo and his marvellous photographs, because from those we've collected together all this stuff here and recreated the interior of the old Midford box, right down to the lever plates and the lever descriptions.
Are any of these from Midford box?
There's just one item from the old Midford box, and all the rest has come from Southampton and from British Rail elsewhere.
And what's the one item?
One item's number 14 plate.
Oh, the old up inner home. Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And all the brass work we polish up, and most of it works now. And whether you would like to try your hand at reliving 25 years ago in our box here.
Well, we'll have a go. Let's see if we can put a down train to Wellow.
Well, there's the duster. You take it over.
Yes, indeed.
Train on for Wellow then, Mike.
Right, let's have a go. Long time since I've done this. A little bit easier to pull than they used to be.
Yeah, I thought they might be. Don't forget your number 4.
No.
And then there's a big pull coming up for the distant. Over she goes. That's it.
What have we got in here, Mike?
Well,
Still a little bit missing, I see.
yes, but it's not that far away.
Another of the Trust's more ambitious projects, led by Mike Palmer, is the restoration to full working order of S&D Class 7F, number 53808. When Ivo filmed the same engine at Bath in the early 60s, she was nearing the end of 39 years' service on the S&D, during which period Ivo must have photographed her on countless occasions.
A number of railmen have a great collection of photographs thanks to Ivo, and it's certainly a collection, in my case, is something which I shall always treasure. And also we were always pleased if we had the opportunity to give him a footplate ride, which Donald, Bill and I did on a number of occasions.
It made me feel very humble at times, the way these expert railwomen would welcome me sort of with open arms. I was a pure amateur. And yet, wherever I went on a Saturday, I'd be, say, welcomed with open arms and had delightful treatment by all and sundry. This is the camera I used, which was Bell and Howell, and I did all my filming in 16mm and all in colour. Most of my shots were done on a tripod. Very early on, I'd been given a lecture by a professional saying, Ivo, you must remember that what you are filming is doing the moving, you are not. And I was also given very wise instruction early on about practicing panning. Panning is where you swing the camera on its tripod, keeping as closely as you can focused on the engine. It's a one sweet swing through. The slightest hesitation or the slightest jerk in panning, and when you see it on the screen, you'll be horrified, think, gosh, what have I done?
The once picturesque Midsummer Norton was a frequent winner of the Best Kept Station competition, an award it well deserved, as each summer the station was bedecked with superb floral displays. Following years of dereliction, the buildings and the gardens are now to be restored by the Avon Training Agency. After climbing a further 2 miles, the line passed through a short tunnel close to the village of Chilcompton. This was another of Ivo's favourite locations.
And of course on heavy terrain you'll be really pounding away here. This was a steady 153 gradient heading towards Malmesbury at this point, and on heavy terrain you'll be really into them.
Yeah.
It'll be a lovely sound coming out of the exhaust.
I suppose a steam engine is the nearest from mechanical thing to a living creature. It behaved almost like a living creature. It responded to human treatment. If it was well fired and well driven, it would repay that handsomely. And equally well, it was a very faithful machine. And of course, the overall effect of a steam locomotive climbing hard uphill, you had this sort of exhaust being poured out the chimney, and the sound was tremendous.
Just 2 miles short of the summit of the railway at Masbury, the line passed through Binniger. Here Peter and I met up with another old friend, Norman Down, who was station master here and today still lives in the old station house.
It's very sad to see it like this, I must say. I just can hardly recognise the place.
Well, it used to be such a busy place, didn't it? And now you're living here, Norman, more or less in isolation.
Yes, we don't get the pines through in the morning like we used to, with Don giving the familiar wave as he went by.
Not much of it left now.
Very little now, Mike. Signal box used to be here.
Yeah.
The waiting room. The station buildings, of course, were on this side, with the waiting rooms and porter's room.
And how did it feel when you saw it all being razed to the ground? Because you'd been here, what, 20 odd years?
Yes, yes. We felt then that it was a sad day to see it bulldozed down the way they did. The station itself would have made, in my opinion, an ideal bungalow for someone.
Yeah.
So.
Of course, once a year, Norman, you used to get a special delivery by train, courtesy of Ivo, I believe.
Oh yes, Ivo. He was very kind in always sending his album photographs to all stations. It used to arrive by train so that all the staff could go through it, and in due course we'd notify the next station that would be on the way to them.
And that way it would go all the way down the line, would it?
Right through the line.
Yeah.
This was a very nice gesture on Ivo's part.
Of course, Norman, you were active, weren't you, in trying to prevent the closure of the line?
Well, they were bitter times, Peter. We didn't like it. We didn't like their methods, and traffic being deliberately taken away from us to make the picture look really bad.
Yeah.
Census of passengers taken when school children were on holiday to make the numbers lower, that sort of thing. It was a bad way of doing it.
In happier days, Ivo, in his faithful Bentley, would often chase a train, managing to photograph it at several locations on the long climb to Masbury Summit.
Oh, one had great fun chasing trains and seeing how many times you could photograph the train between, shall we say, points A and B. And more often than not, the crews on the locomotives were fully aware of what you were doing. And they would more or less say, right, we'll jolly well see we get to Masbury Summit before Ivo does.
Well, we've come 8 miles uphill from Radstock, Pete, and this is again one of Ivo's favourite locations, but not on a day like this, I would imagine.
Well, I wouldn't think so. I mean, the weather today is absolutely abysmal, isn't it?
Well, we're over the top now. Downhill all the way now, is it, to Evercreech, apart from one little short stretch?
Yeah, it's just a short stretch through Shepton Mallet, but virtually all downhill.
Here, at last, on the downhill section south of Masbury, the train crew could afford to relax and on sunny summer days enjoy the delights of the rolling Mendip countryside. Evercreech Junction, where once passengers could change trains for stations to Burnham on Sea, Bridgewater, or even Wells. The engines which hauled the heavy freight traffic over the Mendips were turned here at Evercreech, prior to setting off back to Bath. Here too, Peter and I decided to turn back, but not before saying farewell to Ray Stokes.
This is the end of the line for us then, Peter?
That's right, Mike. But of course, this is only the first 26 miles of the line, and if we were on the Pines Express now, there's another 46 miles to go yet to Bournemouth.
And then, of course, you had the branch up to Highbridge and Burnham.
That's right, that branch off to the left. It's about a half a mile from here.
And that's where you
That's where we came
in from Temple Coombe.
That's right.
I suppose you still think about the old line, Ray, do you?
Oh, very often, yes. God, I can't forget it even. But when you come to look at it, places like this is the first time I've been in here now since we retired, since we closed. And you just can't imagine what it was like now. You forget all about it. I mean, they've altered it all. It's impossible now to think what the line used to be like. The only thing is you got your memories and you can remember it as it was.
On our way back to Bath, I took Peter to one final location, the viaduct at Pressley, just south of Shepton Mallet.
Well, Peter, I brought you up here at Pressley just to have a look at this.
My word.
Really is the end of the line.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Incredible.
That's just how it must have looked before they built the railway.
I suppose
In
it did.
1872 they must have started building this.
Yeah.
Amazing, isn't it?
Very, very sad.
I started filming the S&D in 1958, and I didn't appreciate what I was doing, really. I did it because I loved the S&D, and I thought, what fun to be filming it. But at no time, whilst I was filming the S&D, did I think, well, this is going to be unique in some years to come. That never crossed my mind.
It helps me go to sleep sometimes. Instead of counting sheep, I picture myself now working a train from Evercreech Junction up over the Mendips. I try to visualise everything, every little detail, you know. Perhaps as you got by the goods yard, I used to see the shunters come out and they'd have waved to us and that. And I try to visualise all that in every signal. And by doing that, I don't think I've got past Shepton Mallet yet.
The lorry rules the roads. They've grabbed the freight off the railways, they can bully their way into the traffic stream, and while we're down here, the driver's somewhere up there, cocooned in his cab. The railways saw it coming and were soon appealing to our common sense to tempt us back. On the whole, we took no notice. Well, we remained nostalgic about steam trains because once every little boy, and no doubt lots of little girls, wanted to be an engine driver. But it was all too late.
The steam engine would only perform as well as the crew who were on it. And if you had a driver or a fireman who were prepared to put the effort into the job, then that engine wouldn't perform. I mean, it all started with a heap of coal and a shovel.
This looks like a road map, but it showed the network of railroads before so many were axed in the 1960s. This line joined two Bs, Bath and Bournemouth, with a little branch line to a third B, Burnham-on-Sea, change at Evercreech Junction. The independent Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway was important because it connected the industrial Midlands and the northwest with the south coast. But it always felt like a local family enterprise, and in that intimate atmosphere lay the seeds of its own destruction. Some unkindly called the S&D the slow and dirty. It was slow, forever switching back and forth between double and single lines. And it was dirty, steam-powered to the very end. But it took you to the seaside. Its grandest train was the Pines Express. The men who coaxed those steam engines up the steep gradients and over the Mendip hills were the kings of their iron roads and of a closed world, the locomotive footplate. This film is about two of them, and it's also, therefore, about all of them. Their locomotives may have appeared dumb iron monsters, but to the railwaymen they were living creatures, and in the hands of an expert driver like Donald Beale, a bulldog could become a greyhound. Teamed up with his young fireman Peter Smith and a good locomotive, he was the master of his craft.
You had your faith in the engine. I often spoke to them when I was going along, you know. I know the old girl would do it. She'd do it. Talk to her, come on, old girl, and although it was a bit dicey at times, we used to get through with it. We used to look forward to going to work. Each turn was different. We never had two trips the same.
The footplate men of the S&D were the legendary heroes of the train spotters, people like Mike Arlett. Today, he's laid on a reunion, courtesy of the Midhants Railway Preservation Society. Donald Beale, Peter Smith, and the Pines Express working together again. But the harsh reality of the footplate can never be recaptured. Physically hard and often downright dangerous.
Whenever we went in the tunnel, your handkerchief went into a bucket of water, and you had it over your mouth to keep as much cold air as you could.
And I was on the floor already.
He was on the floor already, and when she slipped, I tried to shut the regulator, but she started priming at the same time. Now you can imagine that, working full out, the blast from the exhaust hitting the roof of the tunnel about 12 inches above, and the exhaust fumes from the whole of that firebox of an incandescent fire. You could feel the heat tingling your skins, and when you breathed, it was like swallowing, as Pete said, hot pokers.
And of course, when she slipped, it wasn't in half-hearted fashion.
All you could see outside of the cab was a falling red-hot cinders.
Just raining down over the engine. Yes. Fantastic. Dante's Inferno. And just to finish finally, when we got to Midford, where we had to stop to release the brakes on the train, which was my job, but of course the firebox was virtually empty then, because all the lot had been cascaded out of the chimney, you see, back in...
So you had to start all over again, did you?
Well, actually, again, Donald came to my rescue. While I went back to release the brakes, Donald was there, you know, filling up the firebox again. I mean, because both of us were, you know, in quite a poor state. We were wheezing dreadfully, you know, with the fumes on our chest.
These days, we can all get much closer to the stars of steam, like this massive rebuilt West Country class Pacific locomotive. And the crew are more approachable too.
Could you sign the book for me, please, Peter? Yeah, certainly.
The interest in railways seems to be as intense now as ever it was. I mean, the Preservation Society's keeping the steam engine alive. It's a thing that could go on forever. When I joined the railway, I knew what I was in for. I knew I had to work every holiday. I knew I had to work nights, early mornings. I thought, well, that's it. I'll accept it. So I started August Bank Holiday 1919. I never had no inclination much before then for being a railwayman. But once you got into the shed, and the smell of the steam, smoke, paraffin, it sort of got into you. And then with the talking in the mess rooms and watching the other drivers and firemen doing their work, you gradually began to get that ambition that one day I wanted to be a driver. When you were running along, you knew you were in charge of the whole job. And if you had a good fireman, like I was fortunate to have with Peter in later years, it was a pleasure to come to work. You had to have your eyes outside, and your nose was constantly, is that the smell of a hot pig end? Your ears would catch perhaps a squeak, something's dry out there, or perhaps a psst of a piston gland beginning to blow. All your senses were keyed up as you went along, even your feet. If you went over a rail joint and it dipped a little bit, your interest was sustained all the time. Yeah, I remember working excursion to Bournemouth. And I thought to myself, oh, what a lovely job this is. I'm going down to the Bournemouth and I'm getting paid for it going down there. Oh, it was a dirty job, and you were black with the soot and then the coal did stick. But it was all in the job. We never took a lot of notice of it.
Does it feel the same or different?
Just the same as ever.
Yes. Can you imagine yourself somewhere between Bournemouth and Bath now?
Yes, and I wish I was doing the whole trip.
You wish you were?
Yeah, you feel the motion through the floorboards the same.
And what sort of things will you be looking out for now, Donald?
Anything out the normal. You look out to see that your line's clear. You look for children or obstacles on the track. You've got to get the train into the destination on time and the passengers walking safely away. Yeah. That's all our job is.
And what about when you got to a steep bank? How did you manage to maintain speed? What did you have to do?
Well, that was Peter's job. We work as a team.
Yes.
I use the steam that Peter creates with good firing. A good fireman, he never wastes coal. He doesn't waste steam blowing off at the safety valve. Gets the steam pressure right up to the red mark, and I use it as economically as I can. When I get to a steep bank, I drop the gear down and open the regulator a bit more, to supply more steam to the pistons.
And were these good engines to work on, these Bully Pacifics? Did you like them?
I like the original West Country best. West Country's was the female of the species. She had a nice green dress on and she was light and dancing on her feet, and if you spoke to a 9, you had a ruff, ruff. But if you spoke to a West Country, chiffity, 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 chiffity. That's all she whispered to you. She never had a real bark on her. Put her up in society on first-class coaches or passenger train, and she was in her element, but she didn't like getting her hands dirty on coal trains or anything like that. No, she was a lady of the locomotives.
If the West Country class was a lady, the Class 9F was a bruiser, designed to take steam into the 80s, built for freight and fast enough for the Pines Express, ironing out the Mendips gradients without the need for doubling up. It's 2,000 horsepower, enough to make a fleet of today's motorway juggernauts redundant. Perhaps the roads were not going to have it all their own way after all. On the Somerset and Dorset, they saw the 9Fs as their saviour. But even the 9Fs couldn't save the line. Government policy was one juggernaut that couldn't be stopped. This was Evercreech Junction. Today, the pace of change has overtaken it, and Evercreech has lost its junction. The station master's house was sold, and the old track bed, which Donald Beale travelled for over 40 years, lies somewhere under the front lawn. It wasn't simply that, for the accountants, double-heading the locomotives on the Somerset and Dorset was inefficient. Jointly run by the Southern and LMS, it was always a smut in the eye of the mighty Great Western Railway. When its successor, British Rail's Western Region, got control of the S&D, closure was inevitable. By 1966, it was gone. Exactly 20 years later, Mike Arlett and Peter Smith set out to walk its southern section. It was like looking for a grave in a deserted churchyard, and half expecting to see a ghost. This signal box governed the web of lines at Temple Combe, which was the junction of the Southern Railway's line to Waterloo and the Somerset and Dorset. It could be a shunter's nightmare here, and passengers needed the patience of Job. But the civil servants had none to spare. Today, there's hardly a trace of Temple Combe Junction to be seen. The old Slow and Dirty wasn't just closed. Within months, it was systematically wiped off the face of the landscape. But it was only part of a nationwide orgy of destruction. 5,000 miles of track ripped up and thrown on the scrap heap. Now only the Southern Line survives here, but through this arch you could once enjoy a view of rural England as the S&D took you to the seaside.
Now, there was scenery from Sturminster Newton down over the River Stour, and in the summer the boats paddling up and down the river. A lovely scene. In fact, the whole line was all countryside. We never ran through a built-up town at all.
Will be a stopping train to Bournemouth calling at Penn Street, Stourbridge, Sturminster Newton, Shillingstone, Blandford, Ladygate, Broadstone,
Temple Combe, Sturminster Newton, Stourbridge, Shillingstone, to Blandford. Yes, it was a marvellous scenic railway.
The only sizable town on the route was Blandford Forum, busy Blandford, now off the railway map. Little boys will soon be saying to their fathers, "What's that, Dad? Was it a castle or a church or something?"
That's been left, isn't it? Yeah. I wonder for what reason. There must be something behind it. Of course,
Every night I lay in bed and visualise some part or another. Yeah. That's where the knowledge of the road came in. You had a mark for every signal on the road. Perhaps at Sturminster, an iron bridge. You're running into Blandford, there's an iron bridge. The rattle of that iron bridge would, I know, 50 yards ahead, there's a home signal up in the bank. And another time you'd get a rock bottom in the track, and you get a rrrr as you went over it, and the overbridge where you dive under, and they all register in your mind and tell you exactly where you were to. And going over the same road day in, day out, year in, year out for 30, 40, 50 years, you began to know it.
I was just a schoolboy, a sort of train spotter when I first met Donald. And he was always approachable, and you know, ideally wanted to get up on the footplate and frightened to ask drivers, but Donald sort of sensed it and said, "Want to come out, son?"
Yeah.
And that really started the friendship. And it wasn't long before I was invited to his home. And it was really Donald who got me my job on the railway. You know, he sort of organised it that I should turn up on the appointed day and see somebody, you know, and he would arrange it all for me.
Yeah.
But of course, what couldn't be arranged was that I would be his fireman at some stage during my career. And yet the sort of miracle happened, really, that I was just promoted. And I was then Donald's fireman in about 1958.
The footplate environment is compounded of sort of heat, dirt, violent movement, and nothing is achieved without hard physical effort. The West Country Pacific, for example, the great area on one of those is about 38.5 square feet. So we're talking about 40 domestic fireplaces, if you like. So probably you could shovel during your 8 or 9 hour shift something in the order of 6 to 8 tons, depending on the load and how the engine was worked. And it's all done on a moving platform. And when you're travelling at 60 to 70, 80 miles an hour, it takes quite a bit of time really to get your sea legs, really, I suppose. The fireman was also responsible for the injectors, just feeding water into the boiler. He also had to make sure that he was disengaged from firing to assist his driver in sighting signals. And generally, he wasn't just a cold shoveler, there was more to the job than that. And if it was done well, it was a real craft, and it was, well, I thought it was lovely to watch when a fireman did his job well. It all stemmed down really to physical effort, skill, and a feeling for the locomotives that you were working on.
Footplate work is teamwork, really, and Donald and I worked as a very good team. As a driver, Donald was a marvellous chap to work with. Because in fact, drivers had it in their power to make life very hard for firemen. But Donald respected his firemen, and I think just about every fireman who ever worked for Donald respected him.
In the old days, the old driver, he was an uncrowned king, and some of them wouldn't speak to you all day. And, sometimes if you would be firing a bit, and if they thought you were putting a bit too much on, they'd simply kick the shovelful all over the footplate. That's what made a lot of us think, well, if I ever get the chance to be a driver, I'll treat my mate different than that. But they were some old so-and-sos in my early days. And there's nothing to beat it. I mean, you're on engine, aren't you? You're your own boss. Pete and I, you're on our own boss, and nobody can come up and say, do this, do that, or the other. We can simply say, get off the footplate. Yeah. But as long as you kept your nose clean, done your job properly, you never saw a boss from one year's end to another.
Was that the main appeal of the job then, the fact that you were your own boss all the time?
No, it was open air.
Was it?
Yes, you were out in open air all day long. You saw every season. Yeah. The snow in the winter, the primroses in the spring, the summer. Pete and I, we have many a struggle up over the Mendips, and sometimes the harder the job, and the more we had to struggle. The more pleasure we got at the end of the day, knowing that we got through.
What was it, a sense of achievement of actually feeding the elements?
If you were on early turns, say 2:45 now or the 3:30 goods, you took your breakfast with you, and as and when the occasion arose, we were back in the siding, right? Like 10 minutes. You simply sat down to and fried up. I'll hold the shovel while you get the sausages.
All right, well, come on top of you then. You got it, Donald?
Yeah.
There you go.
Shake them over, okay?
There you go.
Lovely grub. Get this on a nice frosty morning, and the smell gives you an appetite better than what you had before. And in the summer months, if you were in a shunting yard with the fields on either side, like at Evercreech Junction, or fireman would nip off the engine into the field. About 5 minutes up and down, he'd come back with his cap full of mushrooms, and into the pan they went. And the shunters would be in the cabin having their breakfast, and we'd sit on the engine and enjoy our fry-up.
A couple of bits of fried bread, isn't we?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Turn them over, they look lovely and brown too.
I think this is the only piece of S&D rail still in situ between Bath and Broadstone.
Well, I didn't think there was any, so that's something I've learned.
Oh, there you are, look. And I would imagine this is part of the old signal
box, yeah.
Anyway, you were interested.
We got to know them over the years, you know, and Charlie, Tom, Dick or Harry, and you never knew them all by surname, but that's the way we used to work with each other. It was very nice too. And it was the same with the permanent waymen. All right, if I ride through the Shillings down with me this morning, driver, come on, Charlie, come on up. And hello, Don or Peter. There was no, I'm the driver and you're the porter or anything like that. You know, it was a family affair all round.
The person who lived here was a victim of the tragedy of this situation. You know, if they'd tried, shall we say, improving the service or some form of dieselisation or better advertising or just something, you know, to try and improve things.
Yeah.
But nobody tried. It was just left to rumble on, and the feeling was that they wanted it to close.
They did. The man who wielded the famous axe, Dr. Beeching, said years later, "People ask me now if I'm sorry I closed so many branch lines, but I'm not. I wish we'd been able to close more."
He was in chemical industry, ICI, soap powders and detergents. Yeah. Instead of electrifying the railways, he electrocuted them.
It all happened at such speed, and to people like Donald Beale, who didn't live in a world full of unemployment and redundancies.
I felt then like the old coach drivers must have felt when the railways came in, that we were being wiped out and a new form of transport was coming in. When I went up on the last day practically, I was ashamed to be on the railway. They've gone rack and ruin, wicked really. But no, it's all gone and all gone by road. When I started, a railwayman, he was looked up to because he had a job for life. He was never laid off short. And as the 20s rolled on and the slump years came, he was looked up to more than ever. Oh, he works on the railway, he's all right. He would start as a porter, cleaner, and finish up in the general manager's chair. And the thing is now, you can start on the railway, you can rise up so far, and then there's a brick wall. You can't go beyond that. That's for the boys to come in from the universities.
Because here we're coming out to Broughton Junction, and that's 63.5 miles from Bath, it used to be.
And where was the actual station then?
It was just down here. You can see in the distance the Broadstone Hotel, and the station was just to the right of that.
And that was the end of the S&D?
That was the end of the S&D.
Soon, even the main line, which the S&D joined here at Broadstone Junction, would be torn up. Peter Smith abandoned his boyhood dream and left the railway. Donald would soon retire, but before the team was broken up, he had a parting gift for Peter up his sleeve. The chance to drive the very last Pines Express with Evening Star, the last steam engine built by British Rail.
He worked the last Pines. And any man that can take a Class 9 up over the Dorset, unassisted with 12 bogies and 450 ton behind for a start, got to know his job.
I'd driven the Pines with Donald in attendance on several occasions, but this was the first time when I was in charge, and it's a different matter, because when I was driving, I could always look over to Donald for a bit of support, but when you're in charge and he's not there and the other lad is looking at you, there's a different feeling altogether. It had to be the high point of my railway career, and Donald said to me, you go and drive that train on Saturday. He said it would be something, he said, that you will always remember throughout your life, and of course it is. I was just 24.
Yeah, because I knew we could do it as well as what I could do it, and I never had no qualms about it, and it meant more to Pete than it did to me.
Thousands of people from the mill towns of the northwest and from the city of 1,000 trades, Birmingham, got their first glimpse of the sea here. On summer Saturdays, trains loaded with happy holidaymakers poured into Bournemouth from all directions, while last week's visitors went home. By through trains to Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Cleethorpes and Sheffield, they wound their way back up to Somerset and Dorset. The railway today stops just short of its old destination and is no more than a siding on the end of a marshalling yard. Bournemouth West Station itself has its own commentary on all that's gone before. It's a road and a car park.
Steam was entirely different. You could sort of mould steam. You get back, you were proud of what you'd done. You discuss it with your colleagues. You know, we took 500 tons on Parks and Bank today or something, and say, did you? They would relate that to physical effort. They could sort of sense what you've been through. There was this sort of comradeship.
I'm one of 11 in my family, and I'm the only one that dirtied my hands. Yeah. I hope if the good Lord sends me back down on earth again, I can start on S&D as a cleaner again. I shouldn't want nothing else.
Evercreech Junction, Somerset. It was to be the Clapham Junction of the West, the place where one line branched away to Bath and collared the Midland trade, and the main line ran to Highbridge and collared the coal from Cardiff.
In 1963, John Betjeman, that keen observer of the English scene, turned his poet's eye on a vanishing piece of West Country life.
That Pickwickian figure in the frightful hat is, I'm sorry to say, me talking to the station master. And here comes the 1232 from Sturminster Newton on her way to Bath, calling at Evercreech Junction, change for Glastonbury, Shapwick and stations to Highbridge.
The independent Somerset and Dorset joint railway, known to its many friends as simply the S&D, linked Bath and Bournemouth. There was a branch from Evercreech Junction to Burnham-on-Sea, with twigs to Wells and Bridgewater. But it ran slap through the territory of the mighty Great Western Railway, and was never forgiven for trespassing. The S&D closed in 1966, and has almost vanished off the face of the earth, but its spirit is preserved here on the West Somerset Railway. Among the volunteer workforce is former S&D driver Rodney Scoville.
I quite enjoy coming down here with these lads, you know.
He's joined by another old friend and colleague, driver Bill Rawls.
You know, with the S&D, you know, it's put a little bit different other railways, Bill, wasn't it? It's sort of like you knew everybody, wasn't it? You know, and the thing where somebody say, how's your beans growing? Oh, I don't know, they ain't doing all good this year. Well, I don't know, mine's doing all right, and I offer sprout plants. I'll bring on a few, you know. Well, you can sell, you like yourself, won't it?
Oh, yeah. I used to take eggs myself.
Come on, all their little sidelines, you know, sort of keep the wheels turning, you know. Always keep the signalman happy.
That's right,
Yeah, I'll keep saying, keep the kettle boiling. Yeah, keep the kettle boiling everywhere, you know. Keep the kettle boiling.
You always seem to always have a good mate, didn't you?
I suppose we look back at the happy time more than others, but looking back over the years, I suppose it was a very happy time all along. You knew everybody. You knew exactly what each one was going to do. You knew the way they were going to work, how they were going to do the job.
That was the difference in our railway and the other railways, wasn't it?
You know, the more we look around, the more you actually find that the old days, Rod. This is the base of the footbridge.
Base of the footbridge used to go right up over the top.
At Evercreech, Rod Scoville and rail enthusiast Mike Arlett set out to retrace the line to Burnham-on-Sea.
Seeing Evercreech as it is today, I sometimes think to myself, did it really happen? You begin to wonder, was it all a dream? Was there ever a railway there? I think, in general, right up to the closure of the line, the real feeling of most of the men I knew and the people who worked on the line, that it wasn't going to happen. It had been there since they could remember, their fathers and grandfathers can remember, and it just wasn't going to happen. Some miracle was going to be pulled out of the hat that the line would always be there. But March 1966, the line really did close, and it was the end of an era and the end of a way of life.
Its last days were recorded by the TV cameras, still in black and white in 1966, but it was all happening in colour. Thanks to a few enthusiasts who used colour film, it's still possible to see the line as it really was. In the early 60s, Ivo Peters of Bath decided to record the line he loved before it was too late. His film survives as a vivid reminder of the steam age, a generation after the last train passed this way. When steam was king, even the motorist gave way to its stately progress through the countryside.
Oh yes, the level crossing used to cause some consternation to the traffic, especially as the years went by and traffic built up. It was nothing for the motorists to get very irate about having to wait so long. And of course in those days, rail traffic seemed to take much more of a precedent over road traffic than it does today.
And as we say goodbye to the station master, please notice that on expenses I'm travelling first.
Back in 1963, John Betjeman had the answer to traffic jams.
Forget motor cars. Get rid of anxiety. And here, to the rhythm of the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway, dream again that ambitious Victorian dream which caused this long railway still to be running through deepest, quietest, flattest, remotest, least spoiled Somerset.
Before Dr. Beeching swept it all away, the branch line to Burnham was a friendly railway run by friendly railwaymen, like signalman Frank Jones and driver Ronald Andrews.
Oh, it was marvellous.
100%.
Marvellous. That's what I noticed about it, first of all, you know. Having been at Bristol, where drivers more or less sailed through, you know, and you didn't know them from anyone else. We had a wonderful spirit.
We did.
And it carried on right until I left.
Yes.
I started on the railway in 1932 at Bristol. My father was an express driver on the LMS at Bristol, and my brother was a fireman, and it seemed logical to me to follow in their footsteps. But when I got off the train at Basin Bridge, I thought to myself, where have I come to? Just one platform and a few cows in the field, you know?
That's right.
But Charlie came along and he took hold of my bag and he said, come on, my son, you'll be all right. After I'd been there a few weeks, all the drivers spoke to you and knew their name, you know.
That's true.
And you get off and have a yarn with them. And it was marvellous. The guards and all, they were, oh, it was a fraternal sort of a atmosphere, wasn't it?
Very happy. I wish, tell you the truth, I should like to go up there again now. Yeah, I should love to.
For drivers like Ronald Andrews, passenger safety was all important. It involved constant vigilance by the extended family of S&D staff, people like the level crossing keepers in their isolated cottages, a vital part of the railway service that went unnoticed by the travelling public, a fleeting glimpse from the carriage window. And now just one more forgotten statistic in Dr. Beeching's report.
Very remote here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's surprising, really, how people used to live out in these remote places, but they had all their little occupations and they used to pass the time when the trains weren't about.
These gates were, what, they open and close by hand rather than by mechanism, were they?
They were open and closed by hand, and there was a lady crossing keeper here, and she used to operate the gates.
How were they operated?
Rod Scoville and Mike Arlett made their way to the lonely cottage at Cockmill Crossing.
This used to be the signal frame. And
oh, I see. What, out in the open?
She used to do that in between catching rabbits and cutting a few bean sticks and pea sticks.
If you didn't mind the isolation, it could have been a very pleasant way of life. Always to go by, touch a whistle, and it's a friendly wave from the crossing keeper. The crossing people were a very, very hardy and a very, very cheerful lot. Seldom you ever heard them complain.
West Pennard Station, built of the local limestone.
Well, I suppose this is the final irony, isn't it? Road really has taken over.
Yes, yeah, that's it.
But the station itself, all it needs is a lick of paint and it could be, you know, a station again, but I don't think you'll ever see another train.
One of the stranger daily rituals to be seen on the branch involved the train crew handling undersized milk churns full of drinking water. Other refreshments could also be found if you knew where to look.
There was a lot of cider made at West Pennard. The platform used to be loaded with barrels of cider going all over the place. And of course, while they was loading up the cider, of course, there was always a jar for the for the driver and fireman and the guard. And it was good cider.
The water, however, was for the crossing keepers and their families, most of whom had no main supply. The daily delivery on the morning goods train was still a part of life on the branch, even in the swinging 60s of the Beatles and the miniskirt. And Ivo Peters was able to film scenes that hadn't changed in 100 years.
The cans used to go on the front of the engine. Of course, we weren't doing any great speed. And we had to stop at the crossing, and the crossing keeper used to come out, take off the full water cans and put the empty ones on, which went on to the next station down to be refilled for the next trip.
People used to look forward to it, and we used to take papers, and sometimes people asked us to take their groceries along. They was looking forward. It was a lifeline. There was always a cup of tea. And even the people that wanted to do a shopping in Highbridge, they used to come in on the engine and go to Bridgewater, come to Highbridge and do the shopping. That was the only way they could do it. There's no other way. There was no other way at all.
Oh, by the way, there's Glastonbury Tor, and how nice to see it without a foreground of villas and petrol stations.
Coming into Glastonbury, obviously the landmark was the Tor, which is on the left-hand side of the track going towards Glastonbury, and it's a quite impressive station for a branch line, and with the overbridge, and of course the 3 platforms, and now it's just a flat piece of land.
Glastonbury Station. I suppose the promoters of the Somerset and Dorset hoped that this place was going to become a vast industrial town. As the train, when it stops, waits here for 2 minutes, I always like to get out and have a look. There's always something to see in a railway station. Let's have a look at the waiting room. Gas light, solid furniture, Georgian tradition carried on into Victorian times.
Glastonbury used to hold quite a lot of freight wagons. Coal used to come in. Most of the traffic from Clark's, Son and Morelands, the shoe people and the leatherwork people used to all go by rail, and it was not until the end of the 50s and the early part of the 60s that traffic was taken off and went by road. And then of course we had the signal box there and the sidings over there, and coming along here over to this side. Seeing Glastonbury now, it is very, very much a scene of dilapidation and neglect. It's hard to believe that a lot of trains used to run in there, and we used to be there shunting.
But it was the loss of the passenger service that really upset the locals, among them Ron Wakefield of Glastonbury.
I read in the paper that they were thinking of closing the line, so I thought, I've got a camera, I'll see if I can get some shots of it before it goes, because I knew it was going to be some historical interest in years to come, and that's how I started on it. I had the camera and a bicycle, and off we went. When I started the film, and then I got the wife and daughter to come down off of the footbridge and walk up to the train and get in. That's what started it all off, really.
We didn't have a car, and we had a little family, and it was always made so easy for you. I travelled mostly to Wells from Glastonbury every Saturday, and if I weren't there in time, the train would hold up for me, or I'd even known it to stop for me to go across. That was the service you got. And then when I got there with the pram with the children in, they just lift the pram up into the goods van and I'd go up with it, you know, not to disturb the children. We didn't have much money, because everything seemed expensive, but it was the cheapest form of travel. So you can imagine how we missed it when it was closed down. It was really like an old friend going. When we heard about it, we worried about it, and my husband thought, well, that would be a good idea to film it. We should have something to look back on.
I say, I hope you're enjoying this journey as much as I am. You rarely see much more country once you've got out of the railway station from a train than ever you do from a motor car.
You really felt you were fitting into the landscape because you were gliding through, and you had this lovely noise, you know, when you were going and on the train, that noise that the steam train makes, we all loved, you know.
This is Sedgemoor. No hoardings, no road signs, no lorries in front of you, and no neurotics hooting behind you.
There was one irritation, however. The Reens, or rivers, had a habit of bursting their banks.
Yes, I can remember when this used to get flooded, and I'd come up with a train one time, and we got along here so far, and the floods are up, and we just went through them right up to the wheels. Had to shut the damper down to keep the fire from blowing back up onto the cab, but we never stopped.
Kept going?
Yeah, so railway days, you kept going.
Sedgemoor is dominated by Glastonbury Tor, the focus of mystery and legend, a symbolic presence rising up out of the flat expanse of peat moorland that stretches to the sea.
Such a friendly trip. You'd go through all these small stations like Ashcott, Bridge and all, and the people was always there to wave to you, the peat workers and different ones, you know, that we got so much fun out of the actual travelling as well as when we got there. We were always glued to the window to watch every little thing as we were passing by, you know. Plenty of wildlife where there weren't people working. Of course, there's men and women working there on the peat, and of course they always got a huge laugh from us all, you know, waving to us, and you see all the withies growing, and you can see the pleasure we reap from it.
Of course, you had the Reens running along each side of the track, and it was really speaking quite pleasant to go across there with a train. Springtime was a glorious time along the branch. To see the primroses growing on the bank and the various trees bursting into bud, it really was a wonderful sight. And if the engine wasn't too noisy, the different sounds of the birds and the different sounds of the countryside.
But these rural charms were lost on the railway management. They saw only rising costs, falling traffic, and a government that preferred road haulage. Closures were bound to come. The only question was which lines should go. The Great Western successor, Western Region, was about to settle an old score. Meanwhile, other sounds disturbed the peace of Sedgemoor.
Go away, you brute, you enemy of railways and comfortable travel. You know, I'm not just being nostalgic and sentimental and unpractical about railways. Railways are bound to be used again. They're not a thing of the past. And it's heartbreaking to see them left to rot, and to see the fine men who served them all their lives made uncertain about their own futures and about their jobs.
They allocated the whole of the Somerset and Dorset to the Western region. And from that time on, traffic that was formerly run over the Somerset and Dorset was being diverted over the Western, and we didn't get the traffic at all. I could see that it was being deliberately done. A lot of railmen that had spent their life on the railway were very, very bitter. Let's face it, they'd given their best and they'd worked hard for very little money, really.
Here's Highbridge, the end of the passenger line of the Somerset and Dorset, so I suppose I'd better get out.
Highbridge was mostly concerned with the parcels traffic that used to come in on the trains from Glastonbury. Every parcel bag was full up with Clark shoes, wasn't it?
Yes.
The trains, such as we had, the passenger trains, connected at Highbridge with the Western trains, didn't it?
Yes, yes.
But it seemed as soon as the Western region got operating in charge of it, the trains were altered just that little bit, and people found themselves arriving at Highbridge on the Western Main Line, and they had perhaps 2 or 3 hours to wait for one of our trains up the branch.
Years ago, like you said, Frank, no, they used to wait for trains off the S&D.
I did. That's
and
right.
we used to wait for Western trains
That's
going,
right.
going to
That's
Bournemouth
right.
and
That's right.
different places like that.
Highbridge is a piece of railway history. It's also a railway contrast. So come and see the older station. There it is, with a diesel hurrying through it to the west, to Bridgewater and Exeter. One of Brunel's original stations, with the broad eaves and the cut stone for the doorways and the windows. But now, cross over the bridge and come and see the slightly younger station.
Yes, it's somewhat different in the way it trains than what I used to remember as a boy, with the kings and the castles and the halls running through here.
Not quite the same, these, are they?
No, no, no.
But at least there's still one station
At least there's
here.
still the station's open
Yeah.
and it's functional. Yeah.
And quite a contrast, really, to what it used to be, and an even bigger contrast when we start looking across here to where the old S&D station used to be.
The S&D station there, well, 7 platforms as far as I can recollect, and used to be quite busy, you know, throughout the year.
Yeah.
Nothing left there but empty ground.
Yeah. And then over on this side,
yeah,
what do we have
on
over
this
here?
side there, the line used to run in a diagonal across there. The Highbridge Great Western box used to be right here in front of us. And the line used to intersect across between the tracks there.
Yeah, well, and go under the bridge.
Under the bridge, through the Burnham also.
Running through Highbridge Great Western Station. And there, right across that important main line, runs the little branch to Highbridge Wharf and Burnham on Sea of the Somerset and Dorset joint. The line is used for goods only now, and we'll follow the goods train through the town of Highbridge to its lonely end. Come to Highbridge Wharf. There it is. The place the Somerset and Dorset hoped to establish as an enormous port. The hope was partly realized. That's what it's like now. Highbridge Wharf, your hopes have died. They flow like driftwood down the tide, out into the open sea. Oh, sad, forgotten S&D.
When John Bettsman come down here, we stopped at every station. And John Bettsman used to get out and have a chat with the station staff until we eventually come to Burnham.
I couldn't get into the waiting rooms and the booking hall because they were locked. But the Southern Railway renamed the place Burnham on Sea in a hope to attract railway traffic.
It was so special because it was our one trip to Burnham each year with the Sunday school treats. all the way down, we had this sense of being very excited. You were overwhelmed with it all because it was the only mode of travel that we experienced in those days, barring a bicycle. And when we got near the seaside, as we say, we did open down the windows just to smell the smell of the sea, and we were getting near and that sort of thing. And the seagulls flying overhead, and so they were welcoming us as well, you know.
I remember when he got out at Burnham, he shook hands and said cheerio, and he went up on the seafront, he jumped the boat, made a bit of a dance, he said, air like wine. Air like wine, yes.
It's a beautiful seaside place. The air on the sands and on the pier is like wine.
But the days of Burnham as a railway destination would soon be over. The wind of change was blowing, and there would be no more Sunday school treats. A rapid decline began as the Beeching report took effect. Morale collapsed, and closure, when it came 3 years after John Betjeman's visit, was almost a relief. Nobody seemed to care anymore.
Yes, when the scrap merchants came in, they more or less had a free hand. And
yeah, had the lot.
They were all burnt up. And it seemed to railmen that the question was to get it up as quick as you can before somebody says leave it and we'll open it up again.
All done quick. Sleepers and all.
In decent haste, you know.
What's more, it's wrong in every way. When we all of us know that road traffic is becoming increasingly hellish on this overcrowded island, and that in 10 years from now there'll be 3 times as much traffic on English roads as there is today. What will the West Country be like then? How will we get anywhere in summer, except by railway? How will we see any country, except from a train? I think it's more than likely that we'll deeply regret the branch lines we've torn up and the lines that we've let to go to rot.
Today, the M5 motorway blocks the trackbed of this railway, and exit 22 is now the junction for Burnham.
Burnham-on-Sea. The Somerset and Dorset Railway brought you prosperity a century ago. Burnham-on-Sea. In 10 years' time, when the roads are so full of traffic, we'll all be going by train again, you'll be grateful you still have a railway to your town. Don't let Dr. Beeching take it away from you.
The going of that train was a real heartache. It really was to us people that had no car and not much money. It was really like losing a good friend.